The first thing I want to say is how pleased I am to be here with you today and to have the opportunity to share in what looks to me to be a buoyant morning of discussion about Gaelic education. And I just want to put where we are in a bit of context. And as I explain this, I don't want you to in any way feel shamed by the context in which I'm going to say this, but you might. Last night on my exercise bike in the house, I decided to catch up on a programme which I've been wanting to see but which I missed on television a few weeks ago, which was essentially a century of Scottish education. And it was a fabulous piece of work, and it talked through many changes and developments in Scottish education over the last 100 years. And I just was saying to one of your colleagues next door, when I saw the section about the TOS, I kind of thought to myself, how on earth was that ever part of Scottish education? But it was there, so you know, it's an interesting historical document. But there was a large part of the programme anchored around an interview with Professor Donald Meek, and it explained, in his own words, beautifully expressed, I have to say, his experience as a child growing up in Tiree, in Gaelic culture and Gaelic heritage and Gaelic language and a Gaelic community, going to school and essentially having Gaelic almost beaten out of him, removed from him. And then the filming flipped forward to 2017, and there was Tiree Primary School, and I don't know how to describe it. Colourful, energetic, dynamic in deploying Gaelic medium education and Gaelic education. And that in that little cameo of that programme last night illustrated to me the tremendous change that we have seen and the tremendous opportunity that we now have. And in demonstrating that degree of change within our society, I think it illustrates the fact that a significant amount of progress has been made in encouraging the development of Gaelic education within our school system, and the very positive work that's been done across a very broad geography within Scotland to enable that to be the case. And when I look at the statistics about the number of learners and the distribution of those learners around different parts of the country, it gives me enormous confidence that the expansion of Gaelic medium education has been a significant success in the last 30 years or so, and we should build on that in the years to come. I think as I look at where we've reached, I think there's some, and I had the opportunity to reflect on this in a speech I delivered in Stornoway back in October, and look at the progress of the Gaelic language over the last 30 years. What I think has happened is that with quiet, patient work by a number of very tenacious people over a number of years, we've established really solid foundations to be optimistic about the future of the Gaelic language. And the principal approach that's underpinned that whole revival and resuscitation of the language has been through education. So everyone that's been involved in that journey of boosting Gaelic medium education, whether it's been teachers, whether it's been parents, whether it's been local authorities that have taken the bold decisions to decide to expand Gaelic medium education, everybody deserves to be applauded for having taken those steps to establish steadily those more secure foundations for the language. And as a consequence, I think we can be much more optimistic about the possibilities and the prospects for the Gaelic language in the years to come. Now, of course, to make all that happen, there are a number of key building blocks that are required. We need to have a very strong and solid approach to the training of teachers who will take forward Gaelic education. And I want to congratulate the consortium on the work that's been undertaken to expand the number of teachers that are entering Gaelic medium education and making it possible to expand that provision on a much wider canvas around the country. And I certainly am very keen to make sure that the government is an active player and an active supporter in that process. Secondly, there's the expansion of materials and the architecture of the education process. And I think Sturlan has done a tremendous amount of work, and you've heard an awful lot about that today. I had the pleasure of visiting Sturlan in the summer last year, and to learning more about the materials and actually seeing it firsthand some of the fabulous young people who've been involved in really articulating some of these materials and communications, who are fabulous adverts for the language and its future. So there's really good examples of that material emerging. There'll also be other contributions to the process. I had the great pleasure a couple of weeks ago to be at the Film G Awards in Glasgow. I think that was just last week. Was it last week? Week before last? And what that illustrated to me was the connection between the world of broadcasting and film and our schools, and the ability to flex the curriculum to enable young people to be able to put together fabulous pieces of work with the assistance of new technology, which give a really vivid illustration of the potential and the capacity of the language in the years to come. So all of these factors, these different approaches, are crucial to taking forward that agenda. And then thirdly, we have to look at some of the practical ways in which we can encourage and support the development of the language and the appreciation of the language through the prism of education. And Robert mentioned the eSchool initiative in the Western Isles, which the government's been delighted to support, and I think it's a fabulous innovation which helps us to put in place the mechanisms and the arrangements that can allow us to perhaps overcome some of the challenges of the availability of staff and personnel, to make sure that young people across a much broader geography can actually experience a Gaelic medium education, because technology has been used to the full in the development of educational approaches to the Gaelic language. And one of the great things that I think is one of the fabulous possibilities of our era is that digital connectivity now gives us the potential to ensure there's a much wider awareness of the Gaelic language and a much greater opportunity to readily access Gaelic medium education because of digital technology, because it completely and utterly overwhelms all of the obstacles that would always have been in place in the past about accessing Gaelic medium education. All of them are just taken away by digital technology. So there's a lot to be optimistic about in that respect. I think what, and then finally, the final part of the foundations that I think is relevant and important is the solid support of government and public authority. And in this respect, I want to, a number of organisations play their part in this process. Bord na Gaelic are crucial in encouraging more and more public bodies and wider society to take on its obligations to support the language. The government has a role to perform, and I was just talking to some colleagues this morning about the importance of the government's capital grant as to what that can do to try to help and to support the development of facilities around the country. And I'm very committed to making sure that that remains part of the offering that we bring forward to support the language. Local authorities around the country are quite clearly taking forward the investment that is required to support the language, and that will always be a challenge for public authorities in the context of our public finances, but I compliment local authorities on what they're doing to take that agenda forward. And of course, we need to have a very active collaboration between all of these different public bodies to make sure we've got a strong approach to advancing the participation within Gaelic medium education around the country. So those elements, I think, are crucial to ensuring that we build for the years to come. And of course, the whole framework has been supported by what's been a broadly supported legislative agenda that's transcended governments of all political colours to put in place a legislative framework that is much more supportive of the Gaelic language and of Gaelic medium education than was the case 30 or 40 years ago. And I think that's been a really welcome part of the legislative process. And we, the Gaelic Language Act was a very, very important step that was taken forward by our predecessors. And the Education Scotland Act 2016 was part of cementing further proposals that that strengthened our support for the Gaelic language. So all of that architecture is important to make sure we've got the foundations correct for the future. But of course, there is a crucial other element, and that is the energy and the enthusiasm and the dynamism of people to bring the language to life. And what better way to do it than by inspiring and motivating the children of our country to want to do that. And I think what strikes me in looking at the way in which children and young people are participating in the Gaelic language and the way in which the parents, many of whom are non-Gaelic speakers, are opting to encourage their children to learn the Gaelic language and to be educated in Gaelic medium education, is a reflection of, I think, a widely acknowledged sentiment within our society that young people will be strong and effective learners the better their command of language and their versatility within language. And the recent information that demonstrated the strength of capability and capacity of young people in Gaelic medium education was really encouraging about the strength of language-based learning, which has supported young people in developing their educational capability in that respect. And of course, the approach that we've taken on, the 1+2 approach, has helped to really stimulate and to encourage that mood within our society and within our country. But fundamentally, children and young people and their families have got to want to do this. And that's, in a sense, the most challenging but yet most exciting part of the agenda, where young people and their families can be motivated to find their expression in the Gaelic language. Just a few months ago actually, before the turn of the year, I went to Breadalbin Academy in my own constituency in Aberfeldy to be part of the 5-year celebrations of the Gaelic medium education unit within Breadalbin Academy. And it was just shortly after the Mod where a group of pupils from the school had won, I think it was the kind of folk group of the Mod award. And they performed that morning. The children in the youngest children were performing as well, and it was one of those joyous, buoyant occasions of a tremendous expression of confident young people, confident in themselves, confident in their language, and confident in what they had to contribute to our society. And I suppose that's the objective and the pursuit of our approach in education, to make sure we have that confident, strong cohort of young people able to take forward our society. And Gaelic medium education is contributing significantly towards all of that. So I hope in the course of today you gain a lot from the workshops and the interaction with your colleagues from around the country. The fact that there's so many of you here is one of the things that I take greatest heart from, because that must mean that around the country there's a lot happening, a lot of good stuff happening to inspire and motivate our young people, and also to contribute towards the revival and the regeneration of the Gaelic language in Scotland. And Gaelic is an essential part of Scotland, of who we are in Scotland, and nobody else will cherish it and nurture it than us. And I want to assure you today of the government's very strong commitment, solid commitment to making sure that is the case. But we can't do it alone. We can set the policy framework, we can set the parameters and the approaches that we can take, we can put in place support. But we depend on people like you to inspire a generation around the country. And I'm profoundly grateful to you for what you do and encourage you to do it even more in the years to come to sustain and to support the development of the Gaelic language and Gaelic medium education. Thank you very much.